Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley here for Pinkfresh Studio. Thanks for joining me today. Today I'm going to share how I created this adorable shaker card featuring some of the new Homespun With Heart products, including this Notion store. I'm going to be using those buttons. I'll also be using that little skein of embroidery floss there on the bottom from the Maker's Essentials. And I'm mixing this with the Jar of Wishes die set, which is from a previous release. And I'll also bring in the Cottage Frames press plate. I had that extra one in my packaging, so I'm going to use that today. I'm starting out with a piece of white cardstock that measures 4 by 5¼ inches, and I'm going to line up the Jar of Wishes die right in the center. Now I'm aiming to have the actual jar portion in the center of this card front because in order to make the window on this card, we're going to need to do some partial die cutting. Once I have the jar where I want it on the card front, I'm going to place this into my die cutting sandwich, and I'm only going to partially cover the die so that I'm only die cutting the jar portion and not the lid. So you can see it will only cut the portion that is sandwiched between the plates. That's why that plate was shifted downward. This is what it looks like once I've run it through my die cut machine. You can see I've only cut the jar, not the lid with this entire die. Now that my jar window is created, I'm going to flip this around and line up the lid of the jar on this glitter cardstock. This is a scrap piece I have of the champagne glitter cardstock from Pinkfresh Studio. I love this cardstock. And you can see by placing that on the edge of the cardstock, I'm only die cutting that jar lid instead of the entire die cut piece. Now I had this previously foiled sentiment and cottage frame little die cut here, so I'm going to use those today. And now I'm going to start working on some die cutting. I'm going to die cut a bunch of buttons from the Notion Story die set from some colored cardstock. Now you can use a stencil and stencil in the colors for all of these buttons, but I was using some colored cardstock along with some glitter cardstock to save a little time today. You can see I used a peach color, a grapefruit color, a bright green, as well as some of this champagne glitter cardstock. I'm also going to take the needle on that thread portion and die cut it from that glitter cardstock, and this little bit of thread here from that lighter peach cardstock. Once I've done all the die cutting of the buttons and that needle, I'm going to die cut 4 skeins of this little embroidery floss from various colors of cardstock. Then I'm going to cut down strips of glitter cardstock and cut this again. I'm only going for the center of these embroidery floss skeins here because you can see I'm going to use some scissors and just trim around the impressions made. There's like curved impressions. So I'm just using a small pair of scissors to kind of trim around that curve, and that will lead me with the center portion of this embroidery floss, and I can put this like it's the wrapper over the center of this. So I cut 4 of those from glitter cardstock and trimmed them down with my scissors. And now I'm using liquid glue to place those in the center of the die cut colored cardstock. This is going to give me a 2-toned colored cardstock embroidery floss skein with all of that shimmer and sparkle. And I think it's absolutely adorable. Now, in order to create a shaker card, we're going to need some acetate because there's a few elements of a shaker card. There's a window, which we've created with our Jar of Wishes die, and we are going to back that window with some acetate. The Pinkfresh Studio acetate is so wonderful. It comes with protective coatings, so you're going to want to make sure that you remove that. And you can see I am adhering that to the back side of this card front using some liquid glue. Once that has dried a little bit, I am going to remove the other backer or protective coating from that acetate and place my jar lid on the front side of the card using some foam adhesive. Now, the other portion that we need for a shaker card is a well. And in order to create a well, we need some foam adhesive surrounding our window. So I'm just taking some strips of foam adhesive and surrounding that jar opening. I'm making sure that the strips of foam adhesive touch each other at the corners so that nothing that I put in within the well can actually escape the well. So we don't want anything to leak out. So we're going to make sure that all of those corners are sealed together by butting this foam adhesive up against the other pieces. Once I have that well created with my foam adhesive, I'm going to take all of these die cut buttons, a skein of that embroidery floss, and I am going to fill this shaker window. So we have our window, we have our well, and now we need a wall. And for the back side of this shaker window, you can use the card base itself, but I decided to use vellum to kind of soften the color behind this jar opening. So I have a panel of vellum that I'm placing on that exposed foam adhesive to create the back wall of the shaker card. And now I have this adorable jar filled with all of these buttons and that embroidery floss. I love how this little shaker window turned out. Now I already had this foiled cottage frame and the sentiment, but I die cut a matte layer for that cottage frame using the cottage frame dies. And now I have my little glitter needle and a little bit of this light peach thread that I am adhering together. And I'm going to use that as an accent on the front side of this label. I'm using some liquid glue to adhere the foiled piece to the backer, and then I die cut an extra layer of my sentiment from some nice light blue cardstock, and I offset the foiled sentiment on that colored cardstock to give it a little bit more oomph and help it stand out on this foiled label. I'll use some liquid glue to place my glitter needle and my thread here at the edge of this kind of label that we're creating for the front side of our jar. And once I have that in place, I can go ahead and start arranging these additional skeins of embroidery floss on the front side of my card. I'll attach the cottage frame and sentiment to the center of my jar using some foam adhesive. Those skeins of embroidery floss are also adhered with foam adhesive, so there's lots of dimension on this card. And to top it off, I added another layer of foam adhesive around the window that I've created on my shaker card to help this like sit up off of the card base. This card measures 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, so I created the card base by cutting my cardstock to 5.5 by 8.5 inches and scoring at 4 1/4. I'm adding some of the additional die cut buttons around the front of the card, including in the lower right-hand side of this label on the front of the jar, as well as surrounding those skeins of embroidery floss in the lower left. And then I added some champagne glitter drops to finish off my card project, and I'm just adhering them with some Pinkfresh Studio liquid glue and my dual-tipped embellishment tool. So there you have it, an adorable shaker card featuring some brand new products from the Homespun With Heart release from Pinkfresh Studio. I love all those colorful buttons and skeins of embroidery floss, and I love how these products combined so well with that previously released Jar of Wishes die. Just a little bit of partial die cutting allows you to use this die set for a shaker window. So I hope this inspired you to kind of dig out some old products and combine it with the new and see what you can create. As always, I'll have links to the featured products used in this project in the YouTube description below, so if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there. I want to say thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here so you don't miss any of the fabulous paper crafting, card making, and live stream video tutorials shared here. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.